Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our workshop. I just quickly, a couple of moments that everybody settles into this workshop. It's nice to see so many of you participating in our workshop. And I will promise that we have very interesting and also valuable inputs for you prepared. So I guess everyone is here. So once again, good morning and a very warm welcome to the workshop, the European Codes of Practice, New Opportunities for SME Software Companies in the Context of Knowledge Valorization. My name is Lisa Grames. I'm the Program Manager of Enterprise Europe Network at FFG. And this workshop is part of the 8th International B2B Software Days. So everything is around software. And this is why I would like to give a short question around if someone is not from a software SME. Unfortunately, I cannot see all the participants, but maybe I get something from the backstage area to see whether some people have given information on whether they're not from a software company. Okay. Perfect. So let's move on to the agenda, what we have prepared for you. We have three very well expert speakers prepared for you because over the last years, the understanding of knowledge transfer has shifted towards the new terminology of knowledge valorization, which is why I'm very happy that we have Yanis Sagias, Deputy Head of Unit for Valorization Policies and IPR from the DG Research and Innovation from the European Commission here to give you an introduction to the codes of practice. Then we will move further to the NCP IP initiative managed by Kai Felder and Elisabeth Hayecek, both program managers at FFG, giving a strategic approach on how relevant knowledge valorization is to the software community. And last but not least, we are coming to the Austrian Patent Office, where we have the patent examiner Palmiro Torre with us, who gives you expert insights on how to safeguard intellectual assets. And this is also the chance to have you asking your questions. So sorry for the quick change. Let's start with the first question. Who has heard of the concept of knowledge valorization before? Anyone maybe using their hand? Yes, I see some. Okay, and if not, that's not a problem at all, because we now start to dive into the codes of practice. And this is why I would like to hand over to our first speaker, Yanis Sagias, Deputy Head of Unit for Valorization Policies and IPR at the DG Research and Innovation at European Commission, to give us an introduction to the codes of practice. Yanis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and thank you for the kind invitation. And I think that it's right to the point, because recently we had a survey about the codes of practice and the use of the codes of practice, and we kindly ask everybody how they see them and how they use them and any feedback that they can provide. And I think this is also a great opportunity to present the codes and then also receive any feedback on them. So I would like in the next slide just to show you how we moved away from the traditional ideas of dissemination, exploitation, and knowledge transfer from Horizon Europe, let's say, but also in general in the R&I community, to knowledge valorization and intellectual assets. So the idea is that with knowledge, I think that we do so much more than technology transfer. And we really create more value from the research and innovation investment than the one that we see normally when we go to the market or when we commercialize something. So there is more value, and there are a lot of intellectual assets that are generated during the course of one project, one research and innovation project. So the idea of identifying the value that we generate through research and innovation investments and how this value can be transformed into social and economic benefit for everybody, be it in the market or in the society, of course. This is knowledge valorization, which is a broader concept and encapsulates everything that we did before as dissemination exploitation under Horizon Europe, for example, and goes further into embedding into this title what we're doing with intellectual assets and what we do with all the activities that we consider as valorization. And these activities are, of course, is the management of intellectual assets, including intellectual property. So you see the definition of the intellectual assets. So it's something broader than something that can be protected. Of course, protection of assets is very important. And I think that Parmiro will talk us more about patents and where to patent and when to protect and when is the right time, or if it's needed to protect something. But there is a great value also to the things that we normally do not protect. Know-how, software, I think, is part of it. Also, ideas behind prototypes, we don't even protect them, but there are certain intellectual assets and certainly its value that we have in our hands. And the idea was always to give some practical guidance to the community how to manage this value. So the idea came that, okay, we introduced this knowledge valorization concept. Member states agreed because they identify a lot of activities that they do around that area, which they didn't call it knowledge valorization. They call it knowledge transfer, they call it industry-academia collaboration, they call it standardization, they call it creation of a startup or a spin-off. So all of these activities, which they have their distinct titles, they fall under the umbrella of knowledge valorization, and there is a universal agreement, allow me to say universal, well, when we speak about the 27 member states, with a council recommendation of what exactly knowledge valorization is and what are the guiding principles of this valorization policy. And then, as soon as the policy was accepted, okay, we all understand what it is and what we can do, then we said, perfectly fine, now how we do knowledge valorization. And in the next slide, you will see how this policy melts down into the codes of practice. So what you have there is, as I said, the council recommendation from 2022, and then this code of practice. Well, it's a fancy title to say guidance document or manual. So the idea is to make a manual for all the major channels of valorization. And when I say major channels, is that if you use, for example, these channels, most possibly you will valorize and you will create value from your research innovation effort. And we decided to create codes of practice, which are practical guidance for the day-to-day business and for the different actors in the field, starting with the code of practice on the management of intellectual assets, including the protection, and what you can do with recommendations, what you can do in collaborative projects, what you can do in international context. Then we move on with a code of practice on standardization, because we believe that standardization and research are very, very close. And I think that there's a lot of more to be done there. Standardization activities are very closely related with research and innovation. And I think that it's been something that was kind of neglected from the research innovation community for several reasons. Then we move to a code of practice for industry-academia co-creation. Industry-academia collaborations exist for many, many years in Europe, and in some places we do it very well, some other places not so well. So this is a code of practice that gives you a strategy in a way how to do it and what to take care of, and then how to embark in these collaborations. And finally, code of practice on citizens engagement, because we believe that the research and innovation community cannot be a standalone part in the chain, in the value chain, and society and the citizens, the civil society is an indispensable path node in this value chain. So these are the codes of practice that we created, and I would like just very briefly to give you some very high outlines of how these codes can work. And of course, I will invite you, everybody, to have a look at these codes. So the code of practice on intellectual asset management, it starts I mean, what you will see in all codes, and it cuts across all of them, is like create a strategy upfront. Like always think of what you're going to do with your project, with your activity, way before this activity starts. And this is key, especially when we talk about the intellectual assets. So have a strategy for the management of the intellectual assets. And I'm not talking only about the things that you could foresee exploitation, because there you might have the right partners. You might consider, okay, that can be protected. I can submit a patent application. I can even have a trademark, or I can have a design on that. But there are so much more intellectual assets that we can manage, and actually they can create value. All the intangibles that we create could actually lead the company into strengthening its positioning in the market, and also strengthen the access, enhance, not strengthen, enhance the access to finance and the access to market. So it's very important to have a strategy from the beginning. Then managing these intellectual assets in joint research activities, which is very important. Who brings what in a project? Who does what in a project? Who has foreground access, background access? Who is going to exploit the results? Probably you have seen that in Horizon Europe, for the first time, we introduced the results ownership list. So we need to know as Commission who owns what at the end of the project, in order to be able to help these people do the next step, but also for the consortium members, for the researchers and the innovators to understand that they have ownership on something, and ownership comes with responsibility also to do something with that, or allow third parties to do something with that. And then as soon as you manage something and you identify what can be protected, then do the next step in the market, then do the step accordingly through a list of recommendations. In the next slide, you will see just some examples that we have from the knowledge valorization platform. I invite everybody to see the knowledge valorization platform, because we have more than 130 best practices all over Europe about all these valorization channels: IP, standardization, industrial academia, citizen engagement, peer learning. And here you see some very, well, there are plenty, especially on IP, there are plenty best practices, but you can see how training and skills, how we can scout for results, how we can do strategies for IP at national, regional, or even local level. The next code is the code of practice on standardization. So the code of practice on standardization, as I said, I mean, standardization, when we talk about standardization, people start thinking about the quite lengthy and cumbersome procedure, which might not be an immediate interest to the researcher. And that's allow me to agree, because if there is no reward for a researcher to engage in a standardization, probably the researcher will not engage. And that, of course, is the same, stands for everything that doesn't reward the career, or let's say the financial situation of a researcher. And standardization takes time in Europe, and especially if you want to do a harmonized standard at the EU level, that it might take really a lot of time, and might even go beyond the time of a project that you have available. So the idea here is to have some guidelines that address the three different levels: the level of higher education institutions or research innovation organizations, so what they can do to support standardization, what the project partners can do in a project when they identify that they are depending on a standard, or they're stuck because of a standard, or they want to update a standard, or they want to create a standard, and then what at policy level can be done in order to facilitate this standardization process. Allow me here to say that the idea of common specifications can always play a role for the standards. And when we're talking about software, when we're talking about SMEs dealing with software, I think it's much more important to see that common specifications are used, because the standards in the field, I think it's a bit difficult, and I think it's dominated by other parts of the world. Happy to go back on this, but I think standardization and the common specification thinking, I think it's a very good thing that we always take in mind. So in the next slide, you will see again some practical examples. I don't want to stay longer because I'm aware of the time. The next code of practice, which is it is the industry academia co-creation. So the industry academia, again, you will see creating a strategy. The first recommendation is create a strategy, how you want to engage with academia, how you want to engage with industry, how you want to engage with SMEs, with other partners that can come in on the same project, just around the same table, and discuss what are the incentives, what's in it for me, how can I collaborate, is it at the pre-competitive level, when it comes to competitive, who protects, who takes it further, how can I define this? So these are concrete guidelines that how you can establish the environment for such collaborations, and the idea is this environment to be long-lasting, and then managing this collaboration with understanding who does what, who protects at what level, what is the maturity level that we are aiming for, and then to have predefined agreements that nobody's losing time or needing to develop further skills in order to be able to cut a deal and make an engagement with industry, with SMEs and academia. And of course, this is a two-way street or a three-way street between all the R&I, the big R&I actors. And of course, in the next slide, you will see again some best practices from industry academia co-creation. And a lot of things about skills. And the more you engage with these actors, the more skillful and experienced you become. And we need to have these people, for example, in knowledge transfer offices or technology transfer offices in universities. This is a key skill and capacity to be developed in these places. Of course, not only for that code, but for the engagement with industry, because I think it's something that we really need in the union. The next and the final code of practice is a code of practice on citizen engagement. It might sound strange, like, okay, how do I engage with citizens? Is it my business to engage with a citizen? I think that for many times, SMEs, big companies, industry uses citizens either at the conceptualization phase, like about a product or a service, or at the final stage to use the society as a test bed. I think that it's much more important also to engage citizens and society with research and innovation upfront and throughout the whole process. So not only in the concept phase, but keep them in the development phase, always have a feedback loop with citizens, and then of course at the end, because citizens will be the users, most probably, then engage them massively at that stage as well. And this is again, starting with a strategy, how you want to do that, not being once-off, but as an institution, let's say at the regional, national, local level, to have an idea how society can be engaged, through which platforms, through which tools, and then what you expect from this engagement. And I think it should be also something that could be a reward for a company to engage with society, or with a researcher or a research institution to be engaging with society. And of course, in the next slide, you will see again some best practices about how we engage with citizens and society. My last slide is about where you can find more information about what I really went through very, very fast. And I'm sure that you have more questions. You can read some things here. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. And with that, I thank you. And I'm sorry that I took a bit more time from what I have available. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yanis. We also have one question from the audience. I would like to ask you, what are the laws that define intellectual property rights, and how many of them are applicable in Austria?
Well, when it comes to intellectual property, there is the national law prevails. So the national law of Austria for IP is the one that is applicable in all cases. The IP action plan at commission level is something which is translated. So all the activity, all the actions under the IP action plan are translated into national law. So I cannot answer exactly what is applicable in Austria, but what I can say for sure is that what is applicable in Austria is the national IP law, which defines who protects, when to protect, what are the agreements that could be cut, if there are exemptions. The European legislation comes into play, but through translation of this into the national law. For example, now, if we have compulsory licensing directive coming from the Commission, that will be translated from the national Austrian law into an application. So it will be defined nationally how it will be applied. But all of these, especially on the IP, and this is something that hinders a bit the management of IP across the board in the union is that we have 27 different IP laws applying in 27 different member states.
And maybe one additional question to that. What about companies that are operating in this country? So in Austria, however, they are established in another country. Do the laws apply?
The laws apply when, I mean, if you operate in Austria, then you need to respect the Austrian law. That's for sure. When you are a member of a consortium, which, I mean, because if you are multinational, I don't know exactly what happens when there are transfers of subsidiaries to the headquarters, then the IP leaves the country and then goes and then is applicable somewhere else. But this is not something I can really go deep because it is not something I know very well. But what I know is when you engage in a European project, for example, there are specific clauses about IP that every partner needs to respect, irrespectively from where they're coming from. And there you have a consortium agreement, and then you define who owns what and who has access. But the management of the IP per se is happening locally. So if you are an owner of a result, and then you want to protect it, of course, the suggestion is to protect it with a unitary patent at EU level, but you can always protect it at the national level. And then you have an Austrian, let's say, patent, and I think that we will listen more further on. You will have an Austrian patent, and then you see if you want this patent to be applicable in another member state, then you need to see the conditions. That's why we need to go through the unitary patent, which at least have 18 currently member states abiding to that. So you have immediately, with your granting of your patent, 18 countries that you can operate without any issues.
Okay, thank you very much, Yanis, for your introduction to the codes of practice and your answers. Also, this is a reminder to the audience. Please feel free to use the question and answer option to write your answer in the chat, and we will ask your questions right away. So let's move further on our next short topic. How relevant is knowledge valorization to the SME software community? And therefore, I would like to ask my colleagues from FFG, Elisabeth Hayacek and Kai Felder. Both are managing the NCP-IP initiative. And the NCP-IP initiative is the national contact point for intellectual assets and knowledge valorization. It's an Austrian program that was already set up in 2010. And is now managed by the two main public funding agencies, FFG, Austrian Research Promotion Agency, and the AWS, Austria Promotional Bank. And following the European Commission's lead, the NCP-IP has made knowledge valorization a priority topic and seeks to engage with all relevant communities to support the implementation of the emerging topic. Other activities include providing contract templates, IP-related toolboxes, networking, including a women's network, and general awareness raising. And now I hand over to my colleagues Elisabeth and Kai. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for the introduction. And my colleague and I, we will keep our input very brief because we feel that there is a lot of interest also to, especially in the question of patents and about deep things. So, but what we wanted to do here is, you heard from Yanis now about the codes, and it's also already about the importance of strategy. And if this is the first time maybe you're hearing about the codes, you might also realize that they're written also for a very broad audience, including universities and TTOs. And we tried to to have a look through the codes by applying kind of the lens of what might be important for the strategic development of software SMEs, and wanted to highlight some aspects here so that with the help of this webinar, you might know where you might be pointed to some starting points for developing such a strategy. And next slide, please. Yes, so we want to start with a short question before providing you with this oversight. Do you have an IP strategy? Just answer yes or no, just for us to know where you stand. Okay. I'm not sure. Where do I see the results?
Yes, we have currently 64% saying no.
Okay.
So I'd
Great.
say 1/3 has a strategy and 2/3 don't.
Okay. So then maybe these are some starting points for developing your strategies. And this is nothing you haven't heard already in detail by Yannis, but and you will hear especially relevant aspects for the intellectual asset strategy more by our colleague Palmiro Torre later. But what we want to highlight is the importance of early on clarification of ownership, as well as what also is within the Code of Intellectual Asset, the idea of a broad portfolio approach in which you consider all different kinds of assets and what you can do with them at specific points from development to market. Again, you might be inspired by the other inputs here as well. The code also stresses the importance of open science and open innovation practices, and we wanted to kind of highlight here that it might be interesting to think about this thing also in terms of maybe participating in platforms, for example, in open innovation platforms. So for the second code and standardization, we just wanted to highlight that standardization is one very powerful tool for enabling faster knowledge transfer and possible market entry, if again considered very early on in development and if taken into consideration for early on. And it is also something that might be important for the development of skills and competences for small companies, and that can be useful to develop policies within the organization overall to profit from the ideas held within the code. And now I want to hand over to my colleague Elizabeth.
Yeah, I'm going to talk quickly about citizen engagement, maybe a topic maybe not in the forefront of everyone's mind. I think Yannis has already alluded to that. Maybe it's helpful to think about citizen engagement in a broader sense of stakeholder engagement. Citizens are stakeholders too, and I think that's probably something that concerns any enterprise. But also, I will also talk about the importance of the tech sector in rolling out these codes of practice because they actually have an enabling function, and that includes citizen engagement. Citizen engagement is vital in creating the digital technology that can help facilitate citizen engagement. And equally for industry, academia, co-creation, there's a lot of focus in the code on capacity building. And again, that is something where the tech sector comes in as an important actor that can help build these interactive models, the use of digital platforms, etc., to support the rollout of these codes of practice. So we looked at these details a little bit more. So we feel that software SMEs can support and benefit from these codes of practice with view of citizen engagement, the co-creation environments that can be built, which may be particularly helpful for smaller entities that require cooperation more rather than big enterprises. And also as software SMEs are centrally affected by the notion of intellectual assets, but I will leave that to Palmiro Torre to explain. And of course, like Yannis has already pointed out, the strategic considerations need to take place, are featured in all of the codes of practice as central elements. And that's obviously something that it will affect software SMEs, the same as any other enterprise. Thank you.
I already have 2 questions in the chat for you, Kai and Elisabeth. Please, whoever wants, the first question is, what are the different established frameworks and guidelines governing IP and the development of IP strategies? Whoever's, yeah.
I think that this really depends probably. So I don't have a general answer. Maybe some of the other speakers have. I don't know if there are of course I guess there is also a national and a European dimension to this question, and also to the specific topic in question. But maybe this will be answered a bit later on. I'm not sure.
I think for the
And
digital
then also another
platform, sorry.
question, or Elisabeth, do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, so I think in terms of the digital platforms, I think they don't exist as such. I think the point is that there is a call to build these digital platforms, and software SMEs would be part as part of the tech sector, would obviously be part of potentially building that. But maybe later on in the Q&A, we can formulate some ideas between Yanis and Mr. Torre to discuss how that could be helpfully done for the sector.
Perfect. Then maybe just a quickly information how you can reach the NCPIP team here in Austria. So we have 3 colleagues managing the NCPIP initiative here in Austria. You will find further information events on their website and also on the LinkedIn channel. And now we are coming to our last speaker, and I'm very happy to have Palmiro Torre here. He is the patent examiner at the Austrian Patent Office, and he will give you some insights on how to safeguard intellectual assets to build your company's strategic advantage. And Palmiro, I just want to hand over to you to give you the floor. And can you unmute yourself?
Thank you very much, Lisa. So thank you for the for your presentation. I think Yanis explained how to manage patents or intellectual property, and I will give you a talk how you can, the possibility that you have to protect your innovation. And I hope the information today motivate you or help you to develop, improve a strategy to protect intellectual property, which is very important. So there are 2 questions. I don't know if you, please, if you can answer it. So if you have filed patent or not, or other IP rights like trademarks.
So we start with the first question. Have you ever filed a patent? And the vast majority has not filed a patent yet.
Okay, I expected this in the field of software. So basically, patents are granted for invention in technical fields. And so you need this technical character of your invention to patent it. This is a challenge for software-based innovations because programs, business methods, mathematical methods are excluded from the patentability because they are not considered technical. There are exceptions for this. So if you have a software embedded in a system and you solve a technical problem, then you can patent it. So what does it mean? 2 examples. If an application for a booking system is not considered a technical solution, and then therefore in general, it is not patentable. On the other hand, if you have a software embedded in a system to control a machine, so controlling machines is considered technical, and therefore a patent is possible. So if you have assessed the patentability of your innovation, you have further challenges in the field of software. One point is if you can show maybe the slides. I don't know if you.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we want to continue with the other question also?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. One last time. Have you registered a trademark previously? I just wait a couple of moments to get the answers. Still, I'd say the majority has not registered a trademark.
Okay.
However, there are a couple who already registered a trademark previously. Thank you very much for your engagement. And then I'll continue with your slides as well.
Exactly. So here you have an overview of why patents, software-based invention are challenging in the field of patent. So basically, I discussed the first point. The problem is to have this technical solution. And then also, if you assess the patentability of your invention, then you have other challenge. One is the life cycle of your product. Normally, in the field of software, the life cycle is very short. And if you think that normally the patent is granted after 2-3 years after the filing of the application, then maybe that in the meantime you have upgraded your solution, and then at the end the scope of your invention, this means what you exactly protect, is different of what you of the product that you or the service that you offer. This could be a problem. Further, identify infringements of your patents in the field of software is more difficult than in traditional sector like the electronics or mechanics, because normally you don't know the software which is running in the system of your competitors or who can make this infringement. And at the end, to receive the patent granted, so you receive a monopoly, you can then exclude order to sell and offer the product or the methods. And you have to do this, you have completely disclose your inventions. So completely disclose your invention means that secret after the publication of the patent application is not longer possible. So how you can see you have different challenges. I think here the first conclusion is the first step is to check if your innovation, if your invention is patentable, and but also if it is patentable, you have asked the question: is it the best way to do this, to patent it because of costs and because of maybe the fast innovation in the field of software? But for this, please, the next slide, you have other possibility to protect your innovation. One of them is secrecy, so you can keep your innovation secret. This can assure your advantage on the competitors. But to do this, you need several measures in your companies. You can use agreements, for example, NDAs or contractual clauses to protect your secret, but it's also necessary to have organizational or technical measures to protect it. For example, you can check who has access to documentation, data, or the software in the company. So there are different measures that you have to use to keep your innovation secret. On the opposite side of secrecy, you have defensive publication. This means you can publish your innovation, and if you publish the innovation, then patentability is not more possible because this is state of the art. So you cannot patent the invention, but also the competitors cannot patent it. This could be interesting, for example, if you think the patent is too expensive, or if the enforcement of your patent right could be difficult in this case. So you publish it, and then it is state of the art. Then we have other possibility. One is trademark. This is also a registered right. This is interesting because only 30% of you is a trademark. So my input is think about this right, because protect your the logo or the word of your company or of your product can help you to avoid the confusion with other competitors that offer the same product. And do not forget protection of data. In this case, it could be interesting if several of you are engaged with AI, because in the field of AI, for example, training data are also relevant intellectual property. And you need time, know-how, and resources to improve this data. And in this case, protection doesn't mean that you can actively protect it like filing a patent, but this means that you have tried to hold it secret like the secrecy, the trade secrets. And at the end, do not forget to complete your strategy to use contracts or agreements with and cooperations with others, and on licensing, and also a good documentation of your innovation, a chronologically documentation, what are the important steps of your innovation is also relevant for the IP strategy. So how you see, you have different possibilities. So I think the first point, so to go to the conclusion, is to implement an IP strategy, and this could include several of these options that you have, and there is no best way to protect your IP, but you have to consider the option, to evaluate advantage and disadvantage of the options. And remember that this is not a static process, it's a dynamic process. So you have regularly evaluate your IP strategy and check if it works or not, and maybe implement or upgrade it. And so at the end, the last message from me is please implement a strategy to protect your IP, because I think for innovative company, this is an essential topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Palmiro, for your insights and your introduction. Here are also some useful links you can see and where you get further information. I also have a question in the chat I would like to give you, Palmiro. What is the procedure for filing a patent in Austria according to its laws and regulations, and how long does the patent review process typically take?
So the procedure is you have to file the patent application. It's not necessary to have a prototype. You have to describe exactly what you do and the problem, the technical problem that you solve. At the end, a little bit the challenging is to formulate the claims, which define the scope of your invention. And because at the end, when you define the claims, this exactly is the definition of your protection, and so you have to formulate in a manner that at the end you have what you need. And the procedure normally, I say, so 2-3 years is normal. Maybe in several cases when we are not, we disagree with the applicant. So for example, we say for us it is not patentable because not novel and inventive, and the applicant says yes, then maybe the interaction is longer and it could take a little bit longer.
Thank you. And then with that, I would also open our Q&A session as your opportunity to ask your questions to all of our speakers. I already have one question, and whoever wants to answer it, please go ahead. Do organizations like the European Commission, maybe under the Horizon Europe program, or do other scientific bodies offer grants to support patent filing for inventions? Who wants to answer the question?
I guess this question is for the Commission, right?
Go ahead,
Okay.
Yannis. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for the question. Indeed. There are two things there. There is no direct financing for the patent application. And that's not a bad news, because all patent costs or protection costs that can be included, that are part of a research-funded program under Horizon Europe, are eligible costs. So it means that if you're a company and you want support in order to submit your patent application, you will not have money from Horizon Europe. But if you are part of a project funded from Horizon Europe and the project has a patenting activity, then all these costs are eligible costs and are reimbursed by the Commission. So it's you cannot have support for submitting your patent per se, but if you are part of a project, yes, you can. So there are eligible costs at the Horizon. Now, if a project is finished and the funding is finished and the patent process is still ongoing and still you need funds to do that, right now there is no support from the Commission in terms of funding. There is support also in terms of services. So somebody can help you with filing your application, with advising you, and do all of the things that you need to do, but not paying for the costs. What we try to change now is that we try to ensure a top-up funding, a small amount of money that could be used, when I say small, because we pretty much know what's the cost of filing a patent, that could be used as a follow-up after the end of a project and still when patenting applications are ongoing, to support the beneficiaries that want to finalize and complete the patent granting, and to be there also not only with services, but with funding. And this is something we're trying for the last 2 years of the Horizon Europe. And it's something that we try to include, and I think we will succeed as a standard approach inside the next framework program for research and innovation.
Thank you very much. We also have a question from the audience, and I would...
Can I just quickly add for the national context that there are, of course, also national programs in Austria that might be interesting, for example, the AWS Innovation Protection or the patent voucher from the FFG, and you can take a look at such things, for example, at the NCP IP homepage, just so for national context.
Perfect.
I just want to add one thing, and I forgot, and thanks, Kai, for mentioning that. There's also the SME Fund. The SME Fund also supports, it's like a voucher, because you mentioned the word voucher, immediately it rings the bell. The SME Fund, supported by DG GROW and EU IPO, the European Union Intellectual Property Office, that provides to SMEs vouchers that can cover a big amount of the cost for the protection, not only for patents, but also for trademarks, trade secrets, and designs.
Perfect. So we do have grants on both levels, EU level and national-wise, in Austria at least. And now I would like to hand over to Nidhi Gopal from the audience to ask your question right away. I granted you to speak up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Question. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, my question is to Palmiro, sir. What are the various methods for securing a job opportunity in Austria? And for an international candidate, is filing a patent mandatory, or are the research paper publications are considered as sufficient or enough requirement for securing a job opportunity abroad?
So I'm not sure if I answer this question. I miss a little bit the connection between job opportunity and filing a patent. It's not clear for me, because I think there are two different things, but I don't know if someone can answer this question. Because patent application is a way to protect your invention, and job opportunities, I think it's not, this doesn't relate to patent application, but I don't know if there are from the speakers, if there are other inputs or other regulation about relating this point. I don't know.
I don't think we're aware of anything like that either. I think probably it's helpful for job opportunities if you have a patent in your field, but I think there's no direct relation as such. No.
Okay. Thank you for answering.
Do we have any other last question from the audience? I don't see any new question in the chat. I also would like to give you the information that just parallel, there was also an interesting workshop on the code of practice for standardization. And as all the workshops get recorded, I recommend to listen to the recordings afterwards. I don't see any hands up or any other question, which is why I would like to end this workshop. Thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you for the audience to be with us for this workshop. And I wish you further interesting workshops during the 8th International B2B Software Days. Thank you for joining.